السلام عليكم. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We Muslims seem to have this problem that while the rest of the world is living in peace, whether it is in Far East and Southeast Asia or Europe or America, while they are living in relative peace, Muslims are experiencing lots of violence. All the fighting or killing that goes on in the Muslim countries, whether it is among the individual groups or between the governments and their people, or even among Muslim nations. I'm often asked, why? Is this because of Islam? Of course, there are many underlying reasons, including those that are political, but I ask, is there one underlying reason that is common between all levels of people involved that contribute to this problem? One that is not political in nature but can be extended to all walks of life in these nations. Do we have cultural issues? Is the problem because of Islam, or is it the fault of Muslims? Of all factors, we're going to focus on discussing one today through an impartial lens, inshallah. When we look at Islamic history, we see Islam has had many periods. If the problem was due to Islam, then we would not have witnessed such a great civilization through the golden period, unlike any other at its time, which started from Arabia and advanced to Asia, Egypt, Persia, East Byzantine, and Southern Europe, which then became a great nation, while Europe was deep asleep, as there were pockets of people here and there, all fighting each other, immersed in dark ages. America had not even been discovered. The Muslim nation was considered the superpower at the time. If Islam was a faith that did not promote progress, advancement, building a civilization with advanced techniques through a great number of scholars, Muslim scholars, like Abu Ali Sina, Ibn Haytham, Abu Rayhan, Kharazmi, Farabi, and others, who were all believing Muslim scholars, many of whom were scholars of the faith as well. How could such civilization be built and last for as long as it did? Even the Western scholars have acknowledged, when discussing history of science numerously, how Muslim scholars were the pioneers and founders of some of today's sciences. If this faith was a source of superstition and backwardness, how could it then have such a bright past? However, we do see gradually after the Golden Era, Muslims started to divide in groups, becoming introverts, showing moral and ethical weaknesses. And as a result, all these infighting, takfir, and violence started spreading, all of which together became obstacles to their progress and survival of their, great civilization. So, if it was not Islam, and if Muslims are to be blamed, then what went wrong with the Muslims? If you recall, in the last session, when we discussed rights and justice, one of the categories was committing dhulm, injustice against others. In today's session, we discuss an example that signifies a symptom of taking others' rights, and in the process, what went wrong with the Muslims, at least one aspect of it. There were few fundamental principles that led Muslims of golden era to such a great civilization with great success, power, and advancement. One of these principles was respect to the rule of law. Respect to the rule of law. In other words, law was above people. Law was more important than people. No one was above the law. Even the Prophet ﷺ, who was told by Allah Azza wa Jal, وَاتَّبِعْ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ, follow what is revealed to you, the rules and laws that are revealed to you. When the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib goes to the treasurer, custodian of Baytul Mal, and borrows for one night a necklace for a family gathering, like a wedding she was invited to, Ali asks her, "Where did you get this from?" She replies, "I borrowed it from Baytul Mal." Hadrat calls Ibn Abu Rafi', who was the treasurer, and questions him, "How could you do such a thing?" And that he had no right to loan what belongs to people, to Baytul Mal, to anyone, including Khalifa's daughter. He replies, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, she just borrowed it for one night." Ali, in response, asks, "Did you loan to other Muslim girls such jewelry as well? Why did you make an exception?" This is how early Muslims conducted their affairs, implementing full justice, and no one was above the law, including the Khalifa and his family. Law and justice were more important. When people go, when you have a community where people go above the law, then there is favoritism, there is corruption and chaos. When an ordinance, a law, is issued, people may not respect it, or it may not be carried out. There has to be respect to the letter of the law that everyone has voted and agreed to uphold. So some people might ask, what is the law? Well, in the first place, it's the divine law, the law Allah Azza wa Jal has put in place. Then there are civic laws that Allah has left it up to people of the land to adopt. So people themselves put these laws in place, that which is good for their society. They too need to be respected and upheld. We read in Quran, Surah Yusuf, that Yusuf alayhi salam wanted to keep his little brother. As you know the story, when they came in to visit him, they had his little brother. Did he bend the king's law or go around it because he was a high-ranking official in the government? No. The Quran says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما كان ليأخذ أخاه في دين الملك. By the king's law, he could not seize his brother. He could not hold him back, keep him back. So he obeyed the king's law. As a result, he had to come up with a different plan, different way to keep him. He could not just, without any reason, hold him back. Why? Because he did not want to disobey the king's law. Any law that is beneficial to individual and the society must be respected and upheld. You know, some people destroy public property in order to show their opposition to the government, like burning a city bus or telephone booth or any public site. They don't realize that all of that belongs to people, Baytul Mal, and are used by the people, not the government. I saw once someone went and set a school building on fire. and another one set a park administration building on fire to show their opposition. This is pure ignorance. The school, the park, or any public interest is not owned by the government. It is owned by people. Government is just managing it. These are all wrong. Then they say, this is not God's law. This is a man-made law. So what? Not all the laws required by society are mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah. There are civic laws that must be legislated by people based on their circumstances at the time. And that is why Quran says, فَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. Those who conduct their affairs by mutual consultation, by referendum. 42:38. Allah has left many laws up to consultation, shura, which is explicitly mentioned in the Quran. Therefore, the laws that are sahih, proper, correct, and beneficial must be respected and obeyed. And no one is above them. Something as little as a traffic law, the traffic laws that we adopt in order to be able to, go from one place to another. You might have seen this back home. You see a street that has a one-way sign. Well, they calculated and they deemed necessary to make it one way due to traffic demand and condition. Why do some drivers insist on going in the wrong direction because you want a shortcut? Why is that? Well, God did not set this law. This is a man-made law. True. But it is in the interest of people. Maslaha. You must respect it. What about even the most basic rules, like waiting in the lines? It is an unwritten but well understood rule here in the West. When you go to a public place, if there are more people than those who can assist them, then a line is formed. Some places like DMV have numbering system, but majority of places like banks or post office, they have these lanes that people go through and wait their turn. Then there are places that don't even have a lane, but people have this culture of courtesy, and they form a line. Or even if they don't, they understand who was there before them. So when the teller asks, who was next? They look at you and tell you, go ahead, you were here before me. The culture of respect, courtesy, and respecting rules starts from this very, very basic and minor level. Back home, last time I went to the bank back home, just when I got in front of the teller, there were hands stretching on both sides and above my head as they were trying to talk to the teller simultaneously, over and above me. Is this the patience Muslims are supposed to be famous for? Whereas Quran repeatedly says, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الصَّابِرِينَ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ وَاللَّهُ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah loves those who are patient. Give glad tidings to those who are patient. Allah is with those who are patient. And then it says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ حَتَّى نَعْلَمَ الْمُجَاهِدِينَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّابِرِينَ. We shall test you until we know those who strive and are patient among you. Chapter 47, verse 31. These are issues Muslims do not pay attention to. People in Muslim countries are above the law. People are more important than the law. But in Islam, it's exactly the opposite. It is reported that Prophet ﷺ was preparing for one of his battles. Someone by the name of Abu Ruh Ghaffari was in his markab next to him and had these sharp, pointy shoes on. As they stopped to rest a bit, Abu Ruh fell asleep next to him, and then he jerked his leg involuntarily, and his shoes sharply hit the Prophet ﷺ as he was startled. He then, with a piece of stick in his hand, hit him lightly and told him to gather his foot. That was it. Later, Prophet ﷺ realized that it was not done on purpose, as Abu Ruh had fell asleep. Next day, the Prophet sent for Abu Ruh, asked for him. This is, by the way, reported in Tarikh al-Tabari. Abu Ruh thought to himself, what did I do? That Prophet wants to see me. Maybe some revelation about me. When he got there, the Prophet told him, I have a couple of sheep. I will give them to you as ransom and compensation if you forgive me for what I did yesterday when I hit you with my stick. This is the messenger of God, the most noble human being on earth. And when you think about it, what he did was not such a terrible thing. I mean, some of us would have hit him a few times, one upside the head, possibly. So, this is how the law must be respected in Islam. Nothing is above the law. Of course, by law, we're talking about the laws that are in these countries on the books, in their constitutions, and are deemed to have been voted due to their benefits to the society. But unfortunately, now things are opposite. Someone with a big title thinks he is entitled to go above the law. It starts from the very ordinary factory worker or driver or the accountant in the bank or the policeman and carries on to the officials in the government agencies, the lawyers and judges, to upper government officials, all the way up to the ministers and the prime minister or the president and his cabinet. And unfortunately, some of these governments call themselves Islamic Republic to make the matters worse. It seems there is a sea of disregard to law in all ranks of the society. Of course, more so at the top, which then promotes lies, stealing, and corruption. Judges rush to convict and sentence the innocent. People's representatives or senators disregard the constitutional laws to protect the regimes, not the people. Eventually, all this lawlessness leads to anarchy and oppression. Is this not a total disregard to the rights of others? It appears as everyone for himself. Whatever happened to إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ, Allah enjoins justice and doing good, 1690. Or تعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان. Help one another unto goodness and righteousness and pious duty, warding off evil. Do not help one another into sin and transgression. This is a very important verse to think about. Help one another unto goodness, into righteousness, and, warding off evil. Do not help one another into sin and transgression. Indeed, the opposite is happening in the Muslim countries. There's not much going on in the way of helping one another in good deeds and pious duty. And there's a whole lot going on in helping oneself and helping one another in sinful acts and transgression, which will continue until the oppressed rises against the oppressor. Hence, every 3 to 4 decades, we have revolutions or coups d'etats or whatever, partly because rulers are not serving the system. system is serving the ruler, and he makes the changes to the system as he wishes. However, in places where you have people, rulers, and the government serving the system, the constitution, the law, the system remains intact. Even if you elect a bad ruler or manager or president, the system has safeguards in place. When he leaves, and he must leave at some point, when his term is over, the system, the law, the constitution is still in place, and someone else is elected and takes over. Quran talks about Ibrahim alayhi salam, his leadership, and his offsprings as leaders, as he wanted his offsprings to be leaders. Quran talks about it in this way. وَإِذْ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَّمَهُنَّ قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا قَالَ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِيَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And remember that Ibrahim alayhi salam, was tried, tested by his Lord with certain commands, which he fulfilled. Allah said, I will make you a leader to the mankind. Ibrahim alayhi salam said, and also leaders from my offspring, from my dhurriyyah. Allah answered, but my promise is not within the reach of the dhalimeen, unjust aggressors. So this verse shows that leadership is not for transgressors and tyrants, even if they are related to a prophet of God. It is for righteous and just people, according to Allah Azza wa Jal. Essentially, all prophets are spiritual leaders and role models for people. Some will also have the leadership of a state. In Surah Anbiya, it gives further details on Ibrahim's offsprings and why they qualify to be leaders. And we bestowed, and it goes like this, and we bestowed on him Isaac, Ishaq, and as an additional gift, a grandson, Jacob, Yaqub alayhi salam. And we made every one of them righteous men. So see, you have to be righteous. And we made them leaders, guiding men by our command. And we sent them inspirations to do good deeds. To do good deeds. Chapter 21, verse 72 and 73. So here it says the guided men, they were the guided men by our command. That means they were prophets and spiritual leaders because of their qualities for leadership, as they were righteous men. That's the quality number one, who did good deeds. Number two. Of course, earlier verse in chapter 2, 124, it said, La yanalu ahdi al-dhalimin, means leadership is not inherited. Just because the father is a righteous leader, then, the son takes over. If the offspring, in this case, his sons, were among the dhalimin, unjust and evildoers, they would not have been given the role of leadership, spiritual or otherwise. It means we cannot bend the rules and make his son, whoever it is, as a leader, as Allah says in verse 2, 124, he says that to Ibrahim, my promise is not within the reach of the dhalimin, unjust, the aggressor. Yet, we rig the elections, if there is one, and bend the constitutions to put someone in power who does not deserve it or is not capable of. Our leaders assume presidency or the kingdom based on inheritance from their father, whether approved by people or not. The laws on the books are ignored, and from the top leadership all the way down to the policeman on the streets and the government office worker, there's corruption, bribery, and dishonesty, all of which are haram and un-Islamic. This is what's happening in Muslim countries today, some more than the others. In Surah Al-Qasas, the Quran says, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. And we wish to be gracious to those who were oppressed in the land, to make them leaders and make them inheritors of the land. Chapter 28, verse 5. This verse shows that Allah condemns transgressors and oppressors, the unjust, and helps the oppressed ones, making them leaders and heir on the basis of justice and piety. Meaning, ustad'ifu here in the context, of course, refers to Bani Israel, who were the oppressed, who actually deserved Allah's help because they were true believers, as indicated in earlier verse 3. So one might ask now, Muslims are clearly oppressed in many of these nations. Why then Allah does not help the oppressed, as the above verse says in the Quran, making them the leaders? The answer is the famous verse in Surah Al-Ra'd that says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Surely, Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves, in their hearts. Chapter 13, verse 11. This is an important verse which indicates that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His perfect justice and wisdom, does not change the condition of the people from good to bad, or from bad to good, from ease to hardship, or from hardship to ease, unless they change what is in themselves and in their hearts. He does not change any grace, luxury, or position of respect, or indeed any hardship or position of humiliation or weakness, until people have changed their actions, feelings, and conditions. The change then fits that they themselves have changed. This lays a great responsibility on human beings. It is God's will that makes what He does with them dependent on what they do themselves. His laws operate on the basis of how they tackle these laws through their actions. This statement here is very clear, allowing no other interpretation. But it also signifies the position of honor God grants human beings, as He has made them and their actions the means to implement God's will with regard to their own position, status, and welfare. Until Muslims make sweeping changes within their communities, from grassroots all the way up to the top, with unity and a revolution of mind and culture on moral and ethical grounds, the progress and dawn of a new united Muslim civilization with all moral, ethical, and technological advances is highly unlikely, unfortunately. We have presented only one of these key factors here today, which is respect to the letter of law. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal help us to uphold His deen and respect His laws. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to help us eliminate the corruption in all levels of our societies. We ask Allah to remove all injustices in our lands, especially those committed in the name of Islam. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام على من اتبع الهدى.